So, does the new LG C5 offer a huge picture quality upgrade over the outgoing C4, or is it just an incremental increase? And how well does it stack up against the flagship LG G5? Let's find out. Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Phil Hinton and I've been reviewing, testing and calibrating TVs for the last 20 years, and in this video we're looking at the new LG C5. You can also read the full in-depth written review at AVForums, where we go into far more detail than we can possibly cover in this video. And first of all, I want to welcome all of our subscribers to the channel, new and old. Your support and comments lately have been very welcome, and it's great to see so many new subscribers. And if you do watch a lot of our content but you've yet to click on that subscribe button, then please do consider it, because it really does help us as a channel to grow and to produce more content. And we are upping the number of reviews that we're producing on the channel, as well as adding more tutorials and how-tos, and we'll also be introducing you to my new review space here very soon. So the LG C5 is the sweet spot in the LG OLED TV lineup. It doesn't feature an MLA or Primary RGB Tandem OLED panel. Instead, it has the latest variant of the OLED EVO panel with an updated brightness booster feature to make sure that it can produce about 1000 nits of peak brightness. And as most HDR content is still mastered inside 1000 nits, it means that the C5 is capable of reproducing most of the HDR content out there without much tone mapping being called upon. In terms of design, the LG C5 is identical to the outgoing C4, with just a handful of performance tweaks to the hardware and to the material finish on the rear of the panel. It feels like a high quality item with a good use of materials and a solid build quality. The black plastic remote control included with all LG OLED TVs functions adequately, but it's the lack of a backlight that remains a drawback for darkroom viewing, which are the ideal conditions for an OLED TV. Furthermore, it's cheap, it's plastic, and it detracts from the overall premium experience. There's two changes on the keys on the remote control this year as well, with an AI button and also a hub button that also, if you long press it, becomes your source key. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the magic remote, it's just the body that it comes in feels cheap, plastic and really quite nasty. Come on LG, you can do better. For HDR measurements in Filmmaker mode, it's very accurate out of the box. Our delta E errors are averaging 0.9, which is well below the visible threshold of 3, which means no errors will be visible to the human eye when you're watching TV and film content. Our only concern is the gamma at 10% is slightly too bright, which will result in some raised shadow details with SDR content, taking it away slightly from reference results. The Rec 709 HD colour gamut is also very good, with just a slight oversaturation of the red points and a hue error in the 75 and 100% magenta points. All the other points are there or thereabouts and highlight how accurate the Filmmaker mode is out of the box on the LG C5. We used the Calman Auto Cal feature to calibrate the LG C5, and as expected, our results were very good. The slightly brighter 10% gamma issue is now resolved, and the delta E errors remain imperceptible to human eye. The Rec 709 HD colour gamut is now highly accurate following calibration, with the oversaturation and slight hue errors seen out of the box now resolved. The C5 supports HDR10, HLG hybrid log gamma, Dolby Vision and Dolby Vision IQ with precision detail. However, it lacks HDR10 Plus support, a format that is now starting to gain a little bit more traction on platforms like Netflix. Filmmaker mode now features an ambient light sensor option, so you can watch SDR and HDR content in bright or dim surroundings, and the image will be adjusted to provide the best possible image quality that's close to how the creator intended. It's one of those comments that I see all the time in the comments section is Filmmaker mode is too dull. Well, this gets around that, because if you're in a brighter environment, it will adjust the Filmmaker mode image, keeping the creator's intent but also brightening that image for the environment that you're watching the film in. The professional HDR setting returns for 2025 and it's found in the dynamic tone mapping menu, which allows the setting of clip points for 1000, 4000 and 10,000 nit HDR masters, allowing a hard clip or a roll-off to be dialed in directly within the menus, and this is really useful for creators using the C5 for HDR content. The C5 reaches 1075 nits on the industry standard 10% window, and it also has a full screen measurement of 180 nits. When presented with content mastered at 1000 nits, the display accurately adheres to the standard until it reaches the peak brightness, at which point it hard clips. With mastering metadata up to 4000 nits or even up to 10,000 nits, the C5 utilises a slight altered tone mapping strategy where it has a gradual roll-off aiming to retain both peak detail and the scene's average picture level, or APL. Wide colour gamut tracking to DCI-P3 is also very good indeed, with no visible errors seen at any of the saturation points, except for about 100% green and yellow, which are ever so slightly undersaturated. I measured BT 2020 at 72% XY and 77% UV, with P3 coming in at 97% XY and 99% UV. Measurements taken with a Jetty Spectraval 1511 high-res spectral radiometer show that the spectral power distribution from the LG C5 highlights that this set uses the latest iteration of the WRGB OLED EVO panel. For those of you who want more HDR testing results, including a look at the colour volume performance, then you can head over to AVForums and read our full in-depth review there. The C5 is available in 42, 48, 55, 65, 77 and 83-inch screen sizes, and of course we're testing the 65-inch version in this review. Picture quality and features should be similar across the range of screen sizes, but you should also note that the brightness will be slightly dimmer on the smaller 42 and 48 screen sizes due to pixel pitch and of course the size of the panel. And you can find out more about that in our review of the 42-inch version of the C5, which you'll find on AVForums and on our YouTube channel. With the 5% brightness pattern to test the screen's uniformity, we do see very faint vertical bands that are usually seen with WRGB models, but I wasn't aware of these when watching dark scenes in a pitch black room, and I only really noticed them on these test slides in the pitch black. The screen uniformity on the LG C5 is excellent across all other brightness levels. Colour remained consistent across the panel, with only a minor magenta tint appearing at very extreme off-axis viewing angles. This slight colour shift is probably unlikely to be noticed during typical daily use, unless you're really sitting off at a really odd angle to the screen. The C5 boasts impressive video processing, delivering effective upscaling for lower resolution content and smooth gradients without introducing artifacts in the majority of the material that we viewed. However, challenging low bitrate sources might occasionally reveal some posterization and chrominance overshoot in very dark areas. Although this is rarely apparent during normal viewing, it most likely will surface when you're really watching some demanding test patterns or some really low bit rate content. Motion performance is also excellent, with proper pull down applied to 24 frames per second content for a natural cinematic appearance to film. The updated cinematic movement feature within the True Motion settings effectively reduces the judder that can occur with 24 frames per second content for some people due to OLED's near instantaneous pixel response. This mode uses subtle interpolation to mitigate the issue without introducing significant soap opera effect. The LG C5 offers excellent regular TV viewing with really good upscaling and motion handling. Colours appear natural and shadow detail is well preserved. The Filmmaker Ambient mode now features increased out-of-the-box brightness, making the C5 really suitable for viewing in brighter environments. The LG C5 really excels with HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision, delivering colour and black levels that are as accurate as they were with the SDR content that we tested. Specular highlights are very detailed, and the TV demonstrates superb dynamic range. Even with content mastered at 4000 nits, the C5's tone mapping effectively displays some of the fine detail in the brightest areas before it ultimately has to clip. Overall, there is a small uptake in the image performance and processing over last year's C4, with the welcome increase in HDR performance upping the specular detailing and brightness on offer thanks to some tweaks to the image processing. For gaming, the C5 comes with 4 full bandwidth HDMI 2.1 48GB per second connections, with support for HDR 4K 144 for PC gaming. You also have 4K 120 including Dolby Vision HDR for console gaming. There's NVIDIA G-Sync and AMD FreeSync Premium VRR support, as well as the Game Optimizer and dashboard. And we measured the input lag at an incredibly low 9.2 milliseconds with 4K 60 and 4.7 milliseconds with a 120Hz signal. We also managed to do some comparison testing with the C5 versus the flagship G5, and there is a big difference. As you would expect, the G5 is capable of higher APL performance thanks to the better full screen brightness on offer. Plus, it's capable of a much higher peak brightness results for specular details, all thanks to this Primary RGB Tandem OLED panel. With the construct seen in the original Matrix 4K UHD Blu-ray, the difference between the C5 and G5 is really quite stark, with the G5 capable of much more brightness and detail in the bright APL scene. And with scenes from the 4000 nit mastered pan, we can see the sun quite clearly on the G5 with brighter specular details in comparison to the C5, which looks much dimmer and flatter, and the sun is blown out with no detail present. When compared to the Mini LED Sony BRAVIA 7, the C5 is much more consistent performer with better contrast, better dynamic range and much wider viewing angles without any image dropout. The BRAVIA 7 looks a little bit more washed out in comparison. And the biggest issue for the LG C5 is last year's LG C4. Last year's model offers 99% of the performance and the features at a much lower price point, so you could be better served at this time of the review in May 2025 by going for last year's C4 if you can find some stock and save against the launch pricing of the C5. The pricing of the C5 will eventually follow that of the C4 as the year progresses, so if you really want a C5, my advice would be to wait it out right now. Probably Black Friday we'll see the prices dropping really quite low. The LG C5 continues to be the smart choice for many consumers, and it also comes highly recommended. If you've enjoyed this video, then please do give it a like and also give me your thoughts on the LG C5 in the comment section below and what you would like to see from us in terms of reviews going forward. We always welcome your comments and feedback, so do leave them in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.